What if a single game of chess, played in the most unlikely of places, could not only shatter every expectation, but also completely transform the course of your life? Jess Parker's arms ached as she balanced a tray laden with steaming plates, her fingers trembling from the strain of a 14-hour shift at Joe's Diner. At 29, her life was a relentless cycle. Serve coffee, clear tables, force a smile through the bone-deep exhaustion. Her auburn hair, streaked with sweat, was pulled into a messy bun, strands clinging to her neck like damp vines. Her sneakers, soles worn to whispers, squeaked against the linoleum floor, a sound as familiar as her own heartbeat. Willow Creek was a town where dreams went to die, where the weight of necessity crushed hope like a bug under a boot. Jess carried that weight daily. Her mother Diane's cancer treatments devoured their savings, and her younger brother, Tommy at 14, needed clothes, books, a chance at a life beyond this fading town. Jess didn't complain. She'd grown up watching Diane work double shifts at the textile mill until her hands bled, teaching Jess that life was a fight you didn't win by whining. But in the quiet of her cramped one-bedroom apartment, when Tommy was asleep and the world held its breath, Jess found refuge in a thrift store chessboard, its chipped edges a map of her secret rebellion. Chess was her sanctuary, a universe of 64 squares where she wasn't defined by her apron or her overdrawn bank account. She'd taught herself from tattered library books, memorizing openings like the Sicilian defense, the Queen's Gambit, and the Ruy Lopez until they were etched into her soul. Each move was a quiet defiance against a world that tried to keep her small. Clara, the diner's cook and Jess's anchor, was the only one who knew, a wiry woman in her 50s with a smoker's rasping eyes that saw through walls. Clara had caught Jess sketching a chess position on a napkin during a slow shift. "Girl, you're a damn genius," Clara had said, her voice thick with awe. "Why you hide in this fire?" Jess had shrugged, her cheeks burning. "It's just a game, Clara. Doesn't pay for Mom's chemo." Tonight, the diner was a chaotic symphony. Truckers hunched over coffee, locals arguing over the high school football team's losing streak, and a group of 4 men who didn't belong. Their tailored jackets and slick watches screamed money, their laughter carrying a cruel edge that set Jess's teeth on edge. She recognized one, Ethan Miller, Willow Creek's golden boy turned Silicon Valley titan. His fitness app had made him millions, his face plastered on billboard from Asheville to San Francisco. He was back, probably to flaunt his success. Jess thought as she poured their coffee, her hand steady despite the knot in her chest. Ethan's friends, Greg with his man bun and mocking grin, Nate with his smug eyes, and Carter with his restless fingers, tossed around tech jargon like it was a game of catch, their voices drowning out the jukebox. Jess kept her eyes on her notepad, scribbling their orders: double cheeseburgers, onion rings, a strawberry milkshake for Greg. She felt their gazes, not seeing her but looking through her, like she was a piece of the diner's faded decor, no different from the chipped Coca-Cola sign on the wall. "Hey, sweetheart," Greg called, his voice dripping with condescension. "You ever play chess?" The table snickered, and Jess's grip tightened on her pen, her knuckles whitening. She knew this game, not the one on the board, but the one they were playing, where she was a punchline, the small-town nobody they could toy with. "Nope," she lied, her voice flat, her eyes fixed on her pad. "Anything else?" Ethan leaned back, his blue eyes glinting with amusement. "Come on, it'll be fun. We've got a board in the car. One quick game, you against me. What do you say?" The diner seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with anticipation. Jess's pulse hammered in her ears. She wanted to walk away, to keep her head down like she'd done her whole life. But Ethan's tone, the assumption that she was nothing, lit a spark in her chest, a fire she kept banked for too long. Clara appeared beside her, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Go on, Jess," Clara said, her voice low but firm. "Show him what you're made of." Jess met Clara's gaze, a silent challenge passing between them. She was tired of being invisible, tired of being underestimated, tired of hiding. Maybe it was time to play a different kind of game. "All right," Jess said, her voice low, her jaw set. "One game." The chessboard was a masterpiece. Ebony and ivory pieces gleaming under the diner's harsh fluorescent lights. set up on the booth's table like a stage for a duel. Greg arranged the pieces with exaggerated care, smirking as if he were humoring a child. Nate and Carter leaned back, sipping their drinks, their whispers laced with bets. $20 she folds in 10 moves, Nate muttered. Carter grinned. 5. Ethan took the seat across from Jess, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp, like a hunter sizing up easy prey. I'll go easy on you, he said, his smile half charming, half condescending. You're white, so you move first. Jess sat down, her hands steady despite the storm in her chest. The diner's noise, clinking plates, the jukebox's croon, a trucker's cough, faded into a distant hum. It was just her and the board, a battlefield where she'd always been unstoppable. She studied the pieces, her mind racing through openings she played 1,000 times alone. The King's Indian, the French defense, the Italian game. She knew them like poetry, each one a path to victory. She moved her king's pawn 2 squares forward. 1, e4. A standard opening, safe and unremarkable. Greg snorted, and Nate rolled his eyes, muttering, beginner's luck. Ethan responded with 1, e5. His move quick and careless, his fingers flicking the pawn like it was nothing. Jess paused, her fingers hovering over the board. She felt their smirks, their certainty that she was out of her depth. They expected her to fumble, to play like someone who'd never seen a board before. She could stick to a safe line, let them think they were winning, or she could show them something they'd never forget. Her hand moved, not to the knight or bishop, but to her queen's pawn, pushing it 2 squares forward. 2 d4. The Italian 2 knights defense, a bold, aggressive opening that invited chaos. The table fell silent. Greg's smirk froze, and Nate's milkshake paused halfway to his mouth. Carter leaned forward, his brow furrowed. What the hell? Greg muttered. But Ethan's eyes narrowed, his fingers tightening around his coffee mug. He responded with 2 exd4, taking her pawn, but Jess was already 5 moves ahead. She moved her knight to capture the pawn, her movements precise, her eyes locked on the board. The game unfolded like a thunderstorm rolling across the plains. Jess's pieces moved with purpose, each one a step in a plan her opponents couldn't see. She sacrificed the bishop to open a file, pinned Ethan's knight with rook, and maneuvered her queen to a square that threatened checkmate in 6. The diner's customers began to notice, their conversations fading as they drifted toward the booth. Bill, a trucker with a gray beard and a penchant for tipping in quarters, leaned over Carter's shoulder, muttering, "She's got him on the ropes." Clara stood at the counter, her arms crossed, a grin spreading across her face. Tommy, who'd slipped in after basketball practice, watched wide-eyed from a nearby table, his math homework forgotten. Jess didn't see any of it. She was lost in the game, her mind a whirlwind of calculations and possibilities. For the first time in years, she felt alive, like the queen she moved across the board, commanding her own destiny. Ethan's confidence unraveled like a cheap sweater. His fingers hesitated, his eyes darting between Jess and the board. He'd walked into the game expecting a quick win, a story to laugh about over drinks in San Francisco. But Jess was dismantling him, piece by piece, her strategy relentless and precise. She'd turned his own aggression against him, luring him into a trap he hadn't seen coming. Maid in 3, Jess said softly, moving her queen to g5. Her voice was calm, but the words hit like a sledgehammer. Ethan stared at the board, his jaw tight, searching for an escape. There was none. He tried a desperate move, pushing a pawn in a futile attempt to block her attack. Jess didn't hesitate. She slid her rook to f1, pinning his king. "Checkmate," she said, her voice steady, her eyes never leaving the board. The diner erupted, customers clapping, Bill whistling, Clara hollering from the counter, "That's my girl." Ethan's friends sat frozen, their faces a mix of shock and embarrassment. Ethan tipped his king over, conceding defeat, his smile gone, replaced by a look of stunned respect. Jess stood, her heart pounding. She didn't gloat or linger. She walked back to the counter, picking up her order pad as if nothing had happened. But inside, something had cracked open, a door to a version of herself she kept locked away for years. The game wasn't just a win. It was a declaration. She was more than they'd ever imagined, more than she'd let herself believe. Ethan followed her to counter, his expression a mix of awe and chagrin. "That was unreal," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Where'd you learn to play like that?" "Books. Late nights," Jess said, wiping down the counter, her movements deliberate. "You don't need money to think." Ethan leaned closer, his voice earnest. "I run a tech company in San Francisco. We need people like you, sharp, strategic. Come work for me. I'm serious." Jess paused, her rag still in her hand. A job in tech, big money, a new life. She could see it. An apartment with heat that worked, Tommy in a good school, her mom's bills paid. But then she thought of the diner, of Clara's raspy laugh, of the chessboard that had been her anchor through the darkest nights. She wasn't ready to trade her soul for a paycheck, to become someone else's version of success. "Thanks," she said, meeting his gaze, her voice firm but kind. "But I'm good here." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "You're turning down a shot like that?" Jess smiled faintly, a quiet strength in her eyes. "I'm not saying no forever, but I'm not leaving who I am to chase your world." The chess game was a spark that set Willow Creek ablaze. By morning, the town was buzzing. Jess Parker, the diner girl, had humiliated Ethan Miller and his Silicon Valley cronies. Customers flooded Joe's, some bringing chessboards, hoping for a glimpse of the woman who'd turned a game into a legend. The local paper ran a story, the headline bold, "Diner waitress checkmates tech titan." Jess played a few matches, her moves as sharp as ever. But she wasn't here for fame. She had plans brewing, dreams she hadn't dared voice before, seeds planted in the silence of that checkmate. One night, as she locked up the diner, a familiar figure lingered at the counter. Ryan Carter, her ex, sat hunched over coffee, his suit wrinkled, his eyes hollow with defeat. He'd left Willow Creek 5 years ago, chasing a corporate dream in Chicago, but the city had broken him, spitting him out like a bad meal. He looked at Jess like she was a beacon in a storm, his voice rough when he spoke. "I heard about the game," he said, his fingers tracing the rim of his mug. "You're incredible, Jess. You always were." She crossed her arms, wary. "What do you want, Ryan?" He sighed, his shoulders sagging. "I messed up. The job, the money. It wasn't me. I used to paint, remember? Loved it. But I traded it for a corner office I hated, a life that chewed me up." Jess softened, memories flooding back. Ryan's sketches under the willow tree by the creek, the way he'd drawn her face with such care, making her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. "So what now?" she asked, her voice quieter. "You," he said, his eyes searching hers. "You're living your truth, Jess, even when it's hard. I want that back. I want to find me again." Jess didn't know how to respond. She'd spent years angry at Ryan for leaving, for choosing ambition over their love. But now she saw a man lost, searching for the spark he'd let die. "Then find it," she said, her voice firm but kind. "Paint again. Forget what the world expects. You're not your job, Ryan." Ryan nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Over the next month, he started coming to the diner with a sketchbook, drawing the world around him. Clara flipping pancakes with a grin, Tommy laughing with his basketball teammates, the diner's neon sign glowing against the dusk. Jess watched him rediscover himself, his hands moving with a purpose she hadn't seen since they were kids. It stirred something in her, a realization that she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was inspiring others to rise. But the game had shifted more than just Ryan's path. Willow Creek saw Jess differently now, not as a diner girl, but as a force, a symbol of what the town could be. Customers left bigger tips. Strangers offered shy smiles, and old classmates who once ignored her now stopped to chat. The attention was a double-edged sword. Jess felt the weight of their expectations, the unspoken demand to be their hero, their proof that Willow Creek could produce greatness. It was a burden she hadn't asked for, and it made her question what she owed them and what she owed herself. For months later, a new face appeared at Joe's, a woman named Lena Voss, a chess grandmaster competing in a regional tournament in nearby Asheville. Lena was in her late 40s, with sharp gray eyes and a quiet intensity that seemed to pull the air from the room. She'd heard the rumors about Jess, the diner waitress who'd outplayed a tech mogul, and she wanted a match. "I don't play for fun," Lena said, her voice clipped but not unkind as she sat at the counter, a coffee untouched in front of her. "I play to learn, and I think you've got something to teach me." The diner buzzed with excitement as Lena and Jess faced off. The sleek black chess set Ethan had left now their battlefield. The stakes were higher than ever, not for money, but for legacy. Jess felt the weight of every eye in the room. Clara gripping the counter, her knuckles white. Tommy clutching his soda, his homework forgotten. Ryan sketching furiously, capturing the tension in charcoal. Even Ethan was there, back in town for reasons he hadn't shared, watching from a corner booth with a look Jess couldn't decipher. Part admiration, part something deeper. The game was a dance of minds, a clash of titans. Lena's moves were surgical, each one probing Jess's defenses like a scalpel. Jess countered with boldness, her Italian two-knights defense throwing Lena off balance. The diner fell silent. The only sounds a soft clink of pieces and the hum of the neon sign outside. Jess sacrificed a rook, a risky move that left Lena scrambling, her composure cracking. The Grandmaster's fingers trembled as she moved her bishop, a rare misstep. Jess saw the opening and struck, her queen sliding to h3. "Checkmate," she said, her voice soft but unshakable. The crowd roared, louder than the night she'd beaten Ethan. Lena stood, offering a handshake and a rare smile, her gray eyes warm with respect. "You're the real deal, Jess Parker," she said. "Come to the Nationals in Chicago. You belong on that stage." Jess nodded, her heart racing. The Nationals, a dream so big it scared her. But as the crowd cheered, a pang of doubt crept in. Could she leave Willow Creek, her mom, Tommy, the life she'd fought so hard to hold together? What would it mean to chase a dream that might pull her away from everything she loved? And what if she wasn't enough? The weeks after Lena's visit were a whirlwind. Jess trained for Nationals, studying Grandmaster games until her eyes burned, playing practice matches with Tommy and Clara, who'd taken up chess with fervor that made Jess laugh. The town rallied around her, holding bake sales and car washes to fund her trip to Chicago, pinning their hopes on her like she was their champion. The local paper ran another story. Willow Creek's chess queen heads to Nationals. Jess felt the pressure mounting, a weight heavier than any chessboard. One night, she sat with her mom in the hospital, the beeping of machines a steady backdrop. Diane, frail but fierce, squeezed Jess's hand, her fingers cold but strong. "You've been carrying us for so long," she said, her voice weak but clear. "Go to Chicago, Jess. Show the world what I've always known, you're unstoppable." Jess's throat tightened, tears pricking her eyes. "What if I fail, Mom? What if I'm not enough?" Diane smiled, her eyes bright despite the pain. "You've already won, Jess. Every day you get up, every time you fight, you win. This is just the world catching up." The word stayed with Jess as she boarded the bus to Chicago, Tommy's proud grin and Clara's tearful hug etched in her mind. Ryan was there, too, slipping a sketch into her bag, a drawing of her at the chessboard, her eyes fierce, her queen poised for victory. "Come back," he said, his voice soft but heavy with meaning. "But come back knowing you're enough." Jess clutched the sketch as the bus rolled through the night, the stars blurring outside the window. She wasn't just carrying her own dreams. She was carrying Willow Creek's, her mom's, Tommy's, Ryan's. The weight was crushing, but it also fueled her. She'd spent her life proving she could survive. Now it was time to prove she could soar. Chicago was a shock to Jess's system. Skyscrapers piercing the sky, streets pulsing with noise, a world so vast it made her feel small. The Nationals were held in a gleaming convention center, the air thick with tension as players from across the country faced off. Jess was an unknown, a wild card in a field of prodigies, veterans, and grandmasters, but she carried Willow Creek with her, every move fueled by the people who believed in her. Her first matches were brutal, her opponents relentless. A teenage prodigy from New York pushed her to the edge with a Corokin defense, but Jess's Sicilian held firm, her endgame precise. A grizzled veteran from Seattle underestimated her, smirking as he opened with a King's Indian, only to fall to her checkmate in 18 moves. By the third day, whispers of the diner girl spread to the tournament, her name a spark in the chess world. Spectators gathered, journalists scribbled, and Jess felt the weight of their eyes, their expectations. In the semifinals, she faced Lena again. The Grandmaster was sharper this time, her moves like a blade, cutting through Jess's defenses. The game stretched over 2 hours, a war of attrition that left them both drained. Jess sacrificed her queen, a move so audacious it stunned the room, setting up a checkmate with her rook and knight. The crowd gasped, then cheered as Lena tipped her king, her smile one of respect. "You're rewriting the game, Jess," she said, her voice low. "Go win it." The final was against Viktor Ivanov, a Russian emigre with a reputation for crushing opponents. He was tall, imposing, his eyes cold as he studied Jess across the board. "You're the waitress, yes?" he said, his accent thick, his tone dripping with disdain. "This is a nice story, but it ends here." Jess felt the weight of his words, the doubt creeping in like a shadow. But then she thought of her mom's smile, Tommy's grin, Clara's laugh, Ryan's sketch. She wasn't just playing for herself. She was playing for them. The game was a masterpiece, a clash of titans. Victor's moves were aggressive, his king's pawn opening a declaration of war. Jess countered with a French defense, her pieces moving with a quiet ferocity. She baited him into overextending, then struck, trapping his king with a bishop and rook. "Checkmate," she said, her voice steady, her heart thundering. The room erupted. Jess Parker, the nobody from Willow Creek, was the national champion. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Jess just sat there, staring at the board, her hands trembling. She'd done it. She'd proven she was enough. Jess returned to Willow Creek a hero, the town throwing parade in her honor, banners strung across Main Street, kids waving signs that read, "Queen Jess." The local high school band played, off-key but earnest, and Clara led a chant that echoed through the crowd. But the victory was bittersweet. The world was pulling at Jess now, sponsors offering deals, coaches begging to train her, Ethan Miller calling again with a job offer that promised millions and a life beyond the diner's neon glow. She sat with Tommy at their kitchen table, the championship trophy between them, its gold catching the light. Tommy, now taller than her, his voice cracking with adolescence, looked at her with awe. "You're gonna go pro, Jess? Travel the world, be famous?" Jess looked at him, then at the chessboard, its familiar squares a map of her journey. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice soft. "But whatever I do, it's got to be for us. For you, for Mom, for me." That night, she walked to the diner, the neon sign flickering like a heartbeat. Clara was there, flipping pancakes, her grin wide as she pulled Jess into a hug. "Look at you, champ," she said, her voice thick with pride. Ryan was there, too, his latest painting leaning against the counter. A portrait of Jess at the Nationals, her eyes fierce, her hand poised over the queen. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice soft. "But you don't owe anyone anything. Not the town, not the chess world. Just be you." Jess nodded, tears pricking her eyes. She thought of her mom, who'd watched the final on hospital TV, her smile brighter than the trophy. Diane was in remission now, her strength returning, and Tommy was thriving, his own chess game growing sharper every day. But the world beyond Willow Creek beckoned, a world of grandmaster titles, international tournaments, a life bigger than she'd ever imagined. A week later, Ethan Miller returned to Joe's, not with his entourage but alone, his usual swagger tempered. He sat at the counter, nursing a coffee, and waited until Jess finished her shift. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice low. "That night, I underestimated you. I was wrong." Jess raised an eyebrow, wiping down the counter. "You're not the first." He smiled, a real one this time, not the polished grin of a tech mogul. "I've been thinking about what you said, about staying true to who you are. I want to help you do that, not with a job, but with something real." He slid an envelope across the counter. Inside was a check, enough to cover her mom's medical bills for a year, and a proposal to fund a chess academy in Willow Creek. "No strings," he said. "Just a way to give back to the town that made me. And to you." Jess stared at the check, her heart racing. It wasn't just money. It was freedom, a chance to build something lasting without leaving her roots. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you reminded me what it means to fight for something," Ethan said. "You're not just a player, Jess. You're a teacher, a leader. Willow Creek needs that." Jess didn't say yes right away. She took the envelope home, sat with it at her chessboard, and thought of her mom's words. "You've already won." The next day, she called Ethan and agreed, but on her terms. The academy would be hers to run, a place for kids like Tommy to find their strength, not just in chess, but in life. 3 years later, Jess stood in the Jess Parker Chess Academy, a renovated warehouse on the edge of Willow Creek. The room was alive with kids. Tommy, now 17 and a state champion, among them, hunched over boards, their faces lit with focus. Jess taught them not just chess but resilience, how to think 3 steps ahead, how to rise after loss, how to believe in their own worth. The academy was more than a school. It was a beacon, drawing kids from neighboring towns, even a few grandmasters who came to train with the Diner Girl. Jess had gone pro, competing in international tournaments, her name a fixture in the chess world. She'd faced legends in London, Moscow, and Dubai. Her Italian 2 nights, defense a signature that left opponents scrambling. But she always came home. The diner was still her anchor, Clara her family, Ryan her partner in a quiet, steady love. His paintings told her story, hung in galleries from Asheville to New York. Each one a testament to the night she'd stunned a room full of skeptics. Diane watched in the front row of the Academy's first tournament, her strength fully returned, her pride a quiet fire. Ethan visited occasionally, not as a savior but as a friend, his donations keeping the Academy's doors open. Lena Voss became a mentor. Their matches a dance of equals, their friendship a bond forged in mutual respect. As Tommy checkmated his opponent, a kid from Asheville with a knack for bold openings, Jess felt a swell of pride, not just for him but for herself. She'd been invited to play as a joke, but she'd turned the board into her kingdom. The world had tried to define her, waitress, small-town girl, nobody, but she'd rewritten the rules, not just for herself but for everyone she touched. Outside, the neon sign of Joe's Diner glowed, a beacon in the night. Jess stepped into the cool air, Ryan's hand in hers, the stars above endless. Her next move was hers to make, and she knew it would be fearless. Not for fame or glory, but for the life she'd built, the people she loved, and the legacy she'd leave behind. She looked back at the academy, its windows warm with light, and smiled. The game had started with a joke, but it ended with a truth. Jess Parker was a queen, and her kingdom was limitless.